Okay, time to get a measure of what's been going on the Hill today from our journalist panel. Joining me now is Susan Delacourt from the Toronto Star and Gloria Galloway from the Globe and Mail. Thanks for joining me. We're going to start off by talking about Defence Minister Peter MacKay, who I will point out yet again would not come on the show today. Of course, we'll talk about defence and his whether he's staying or going, but although I hear now he's definitely staying in that portfolio. Susan, you tweeted something hilarious, though, today. I guess we were all glued to the engagement of Prince William and Kate Middleton, and you said, tell them what you said in your tweet.
I don't remember exactly, but it was prompted by the fact that every time I turned around to my TV today, it was either Peter MacKay or Prince William, so I started to confuse them. And
they do kind of look alike.
A little bit, yeah.
Just, oh, come on, Gloria, yeah. Can't you see it?
Yeah, well, they were both talking about commitment as well.
Okay, I'm not going to go there.
They're both handsome men.
Yes. See, yeah, there you go. We gave the Defence Minister a big buy on that. But continuing on, what have we heard? I mean, what's the update there, Gloria? I mean, is it over now, this whole story?
Well, you know, it's never over till it's over, right? I mean, I think that we'll suddenly find out, just like we did with Mr. Prentice, perhaps in January, that he's going somewhere. But I think for now, at least, it's been put to rest. And I thought the exchange in the House of Commons during question period was really kind of funny. I thought Mr. MacKay and the government did manage to turn it back on the opposition, saying, we're so glad that you're so, concerned about my welfare and concerned about keeping me here. I thought they handled it well, but today, I think in general, the whole thing has not been handled very well. I think it's obvious that there was at some point some negotiation going on. What the state of those negotiations are right now, I don't know, but obviously it's been put on hold for a bit.
Yeah, I think, first of all, to be serious about it, the Prime Minister did stand up today and say something too, not implying that Gloria wasn't serious. I think people are getting carried away with the job offer and not connecting the two things, which is that on the whole announcement of this mission, the Defence Minister has been cut out completely. He's not on this show talking today. That may be a communications issue. More importantly, Parliament is still cut out. And I don't know why we can't have a debate on this. It could be a take-note debate. But I think Peter MacKay and the Parliament of Canada share something in common today, which is that they have both been sort of railroaded right out of this decision.
He looked incredibly stressed today, the Defence Minister. I'm going to give him a lot of credit and say that it's a portfolio and weighty issues of the NATO conference coming up. But he...
this government does make... I think it's a communications error in that they decide at the outset that one minister must be responsible for the messaging on one issue, and they won't let anybody else talk about that issue.
Now, the Defence Minister.
He is the Defence Minister. My completely, in my head idea of what went on here is that somebody said, well, look, because we want to transition this into some kind of foreign affairs thing. We're going to be there. It's not going to be an army thing. It's going to be helping thing. It's going to be, helping the Afghans. That they decided it was better as a foreign affairs, message. Or Peter MacKay is in the doghouse, but or
the other.
But it could well be the first.
Okay. Moving on to, again, it's a communication story with the Conservatives, I hate to say again. We have the Trade Minister, Canada's Trade Minister, who's in India right now. So Peter Van Loan decides he's going to have a media call-in. He's in India. He's in New Delhi, right? And he tells journalists, you can call in at this time. We'll all answer your questions. And then, Susan, pick up the story from here.
Well, I should say I wasn't there. I just saw the report of it, I think from the Can West reporter, who said that a Devinder Shori, who happens to be a member of Parliament, a Conservative member of Parliament, phoned in and identified himself as a member of Parliament, a member of the Calgary Parliament, I think was how he...
He did say Calgary.
Yeah, so Calgary is separate, Alberta is separated while we... But I found it hard not to laugh at this one today too, is first of all, it is very hard for journalists to ask questions around this place too. I wondered if he had to vet his questions or get on a list. If he wants to take up the career as a freelance journalist, maybe they don't have enough to do. So, but yeah, we'd be happy to have him sort of, I'd give him my spot in the lineup if he wants to ask a question of the PM.
Yeah, no, strategic error on the part of Mr. Shorey for sure. He's had his problems lately. There were allegations that he was in some kind of physical encounter in the riding just recently with a man who, wanted his job. I mean, he's had the allegations about some business dealings that we wrote about in the Globe and Mail, and I think maybe, again, just surmising that he thought he was probably helping. He probably didn't realize that jumping in as a booster for the government on a media call was probably the worst thing he could do. And it was, didn't leave him in a very good state, I have to say.
I don't think that's going to... We do actually have rules. The government doesn't make the rules about who gets to ask questions, or it shouldn't. And those are there for good reasons. We don't want lobbyists or interest groups or activists joining those calls too and harassing ministers when journalists are trying to do their job. And I hope that he's had his wrist slapped for this, because who's to stop? I read somewhere that they said this was part of their transparency effort, and I thought, well, that's a novel way of going about transparency.
But, in terms of, we talked about Peter MacKay, we talked about, this incident, we're talking about the communication strategy, and let's face it, they really don't want to communicate with us because we're evil. The Liberals say we're evil, the NDP says we're evil, the Conservatives say we're evil. We're obviously doing a fairly good job. So, but in terms of going on this speaking tour now, I would like to see more connection between Canadians and their government. Do you think that's where we're headed, so that the three of us aren't guessing at what Canadians are thinking? We actually can televise it and say, hey, look, question from ordinary Canadian to Prime Minister, this is what we think of whatever.
This summer I spent a lot of time deliberately aboard the Liberal Express with Michael Ignatieff, and I recommend it to any political journalist in Ottawa. It's a good idea to get out of here. I think, no, seriously, people start to think that this is all about a game. And there are a lot of people out there who have a real interest in what's going on here. They show up, they ask questions. I'm pleased to see that the Prime Minister, I think, is going to do a listening tour. I don't think it was a good idea to open it by saying no questions, but maybe the next time maybe the next stop is the listening part, but I think it's a good idea.
I'd be very surprised if there was a lot more communication between the Prime Minister's office, the Prime Minister, and the public. I mean, listening tours aside, I'd be delighted and surprised.
Okay, I'll be looking forward to it too. So fingers crossed, we'll all be wrong and it'll be really good. Because I would be interested to hear that. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
We have waited a long time for copyright reform. Unfortunately, I'm afraid this bill wasn't worth the wait. Bill C-32 isn't good for creators, and in the long term, we don't believe it's good for consumers either. Our cultural content is part of who we are as a nation. It is also an integral part and heart of a thriving digital economy. Bill C-32 doesn't give artists and content creators any assurance that their intellectual property rights will be respected. Instead of valuing creators, this bill says their work should be given away for free. Our message is simple. If content is free today, it will be gone tomorrow.
So the issue here, of course, is Canadian content. And while many people in Canada can agree that we want to see more of it, are Canadians willing to pay for it? And there's a new copyright bill before the House right now. Here to talk about it, Fern Downey. And you are the president, actually, of ACTRA. And you are a national union representing, we should say, 21,000 professional performers. And a man many people may recognize is Eric Peterson.
I'm the jackass that's here to talk about this issue to you.
Other than identifying you that way, I will say you starred in the CTV series Corner Gas. You know, they're probably going to have to blank that out and everything. Well, thanks a lot.
It's a great word.
Causing trouble already. Why do we even let them in on this conversation? Fern, a very serious topic here, and I think that many Canadians understand copyright and protection. But as concisely as you can put it, what are you telling Canadians about the bill as it exists right now and why it won't protect Canadian content?
Well, we're at a beautiful time in our world in that there's a digital revolution going on. So we're looking at collectively where is the place of Canadian content inside this digital revolution. So the government very wisely is trying to get a Copyright Modernization Act in gear, right? It's where we're way out of compliance with international norms. So in '96, they started amendments in the Copyright Act at the time when we hadn't even invented like iPods and MP3 players and those kind of things. It's a revolution. So now in 2010, when we're looking forward, we have to look at the place of content in the digital revolution, and it's not well accommodated within the Act currently as drafted, but I think they can fix it.
Eric, what do you think?
Well, again, I think they can fix it. I mean, at the moment, it doesn't. When you're talking copyright, you're talking about access, but you're also talking about compensation in a way. So the Act is providing access. Now the question is to wean people off of getting all this stuff for free. Yeah. Because for
Canadians like free.
But again,
convince them why, you know.
Of course, but I mean, we don't go on to car lots and drive a Ford off just because it goes, yeah, I think I like free things. I like a free car. But I mean, again, if you have professional artists doing something, that's their property that they sell. And if you're going to buy it, then you owe them money for it, as well as a kind of residual right. So at the moment we have access, but what the bill at the present time does, takes out the compensation.
The revenue streams that go to the actual artists.
And basically the argument is, why are you changing any of that to a certain extent just because we're going to a new platform of seeing something? You know, you go to the movies to see it, you pay for it. You know, on your television, you pay for it. So that's what we've been talking about with politicians up here today, is how do we get that? Because people have to, for content on our internet, that the world is going to come and look for us, and our own audience is going to find our cultural products on the internet. They're not going to be on our TV screens for very long anymore. So it's so important that we have Canadian content there, but people have to get paid for it. And I mean, you don't get paid for it, nobody's actually going to do it.
And what about people who are, though, say for the free market? Look, if a Canadian has a good product out there in terms of their own input, their own creativity, their own production, they will get paid for it. The market will decide that. We don't need the laws interfering.
Well, I'm not a proponent of the free market theory in that way. I'm really a content queen. I mean, content is king in our world. And most Canadians that I talk with, even all the last 2 days here in Parliament Hill, everybody wants to see Canadian content. Audiovisual Canadian content is one of the most sought after things on the internet.
Pricing it is key.
Well, but pricing it can be affordable. Once you get over the...
Free.
Free is not good. Like,
You know, that's
free,
slavery.
Yeah.
It can't be free. I'm sorry, that's just not a price.
If it's free today, it'll be gone tomorrow. How will creators be able to create content if there's no recompense, no revenue streams coming back? Now, I think where it's going to be great for the Canadian public is that the revenue streams are just modest. Like what we already pay in terms of copyright, you know, levies and such for the audio performers like singers and musicians is so modest.
Talking about very incremental revenue here. That'll make the difference in an artist's
yes,
life.
Absolutely.
Makes a difference right now to a musician who can now make another album simply from this, what is it, $1 million? But there's 1 million singers, you know. It's like, it's not very much money we're talking about. You know, artists in this country, you know, are one of the lowest paid groups, and we're cheerful about it, and we go about it, and we give real value for the money. I'd just like to add that the notion of coddling or subsidizing our national culture, sorry, okay, but what the internet, but when we get to the internet, the only distinct thing we're going to have in the marketplace is Canadian culture.
We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate that discussion.
Great.
I'm Paula Newton. Thanks for joining me on Power Play. I'll be right back in this chair tomorrow. Thanks.
You are watching CTV News Channel.
Back pain sufferers, wake up to a pain-free life or your money back.